So my proposition for a conclusion, for a simplicity beyond the complexity of love, is unconditional love exists. It's not created or creatable. It is accessible and discoverable. And as you discover it, you can display it. But it always exists amongst everything. Unconditional is only used with love. Let's just start with that. If you're okay with that.
Yeah, tell me about that.
What else is there in the world that is unconditional? I can't think of anything that you use that word unconditional.
Unconditionally. Well,
unconditionally, maybe.
Yeah, so maybe there are things that are unconditional, but you don't use that word to describe it. Are there other words that you could use that mean the same thing?
Unconditional is without condition. So are there things without condition? Are there things that are accepted generally acceptable? Generally accepted, the gap, generally accepted accounting principles. Those are unconditional accounting principles. Right?
Yeah, it is not limited. It's absolute.
Yeah, they're generally accepted. You can use them anywhere. Physics, the laws of physics seem to be unconditional. They don't only apply to this world. They're supposed to be universal and tested universally. So you do have unconditional. Unconditional means then that it's open to testing from any direction. So is generally accepted. Generally accepted is an idea.
It seems that unconditional, something being in an unconditional state without conditions would be bland. Is that correct?
Bland and boring, like heaven. Sitting on clouds eating grapes. That type of unconditional isn't pleasing. It's not fun. It's not desirable. So is unconditional love also undesirable? Unconditional peace or unconditional joy.
Joy without condition.
Right, because that goes back to the scriptural reference of opposition in all things and the opposing forces. So if you try to love without an opposing force, what is it?
Is it love? Can it be love?
Can you have love if you don't have hate? This book I read talked about the love-hate relationship. If you do what I want you to do, then I love you. If you don't do that, then I hate you. Most relationships, I think you said, it's something like that, are love-hate relationships. As long as you do and operate the way I want, then
That's a subjective thing. Would unconditional love be objective?
And that's okay. The subjective just means that you can make a choice. You can have a decision on it. The proposition was brought up that unconditional love erases judgment. It's just full acceptance. So the question is, do you have to, identifying that you're going to fully accept, still states that you do see, you're making a judgment. You're making a judgment. There's good and there's bad, and you're accepting the good and you're ignoring the bad, but you still make a judgment. It's not a judgment-free zone. You don't throw your judgment away.
Right.
You still see that's a bad part of them, but I'm still going to accept.
Yeah. Okay, so who is loving unconditionally in what we're discussing?
Is the who is important is what you're identifying.
I think so. I mean, everything that I looked at yesterday was everything was about, well, not everything. One was not about God. Everything else was about God. God loves you unconditionally, and yet there are conditions.
There are commandments, right? So if he loves you unconditionally, why would there be commandments? Why would that exist?
Can you only say that is a God thing? God is the only context in which we speak of unconditional love, or can a human unconditionally love another human?
And we're talking about humans because I brought out the question earlier about animals. Do animals unconditionally love? Is it part of instinct? Is unconditional love an instinctual action? It's a reaction. It's something that always exists there.
It was there from the beginning, and we just learn how to not do it anymore. If it's an instinctual thing.
Or for safety reasons, we can't love something that's going to hurt us. And so we get these cues, and your response system, autonomic response system, is built to react when someone comes to you with a weapon or something that's offensive, possibly harmful.
Yeah, weapons are offensive.
You can't love that thing. So there are things you can't unconditionally love. You can't unconditionally love a knife being stuck into you. That's not going to be useful.
Well, can you not do it because it's not useful?
So that's kind of using usefulness as the judge. What is the real judge?
Yeah.
The real judgment criteria. In judgment, I was looking at this. You concentrate on the strengths of others and overlook their weaknesses. But that's still not an indication. You have to, in order to unconditionally love, you have to concentrate on their strengths and ignore their weaknesses, but you're still judging.
Because you're choosing to ignore.
Yeah, that's still, it's a choice. And that's what makes it a choice. So unconditional love is a choice. You have opposites. You have an evil and you have a good, and you're going to accept the good and you're going to ignore the evil. You're going to overlook the weakness or the evil.
That's still conditional. I think it's still conditional love if there's a judgment. Like,
okay, and that's the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's unconditional would have to be it's going to happen no matter what, good or bad, and you don't choose whether you're going to love it or not. It's unconditionally going to be loved. I think we need to think of like specific something that we can test, a scenario that we can test, okay? So, a mother and a child. Let's talk about unconditional love in that context. How about that? So, conditional love would be, I will love you if you don't do anything bad, if you don't do anything that I don't like.
Identify a specific don't like.
Let's say a child intentionally does something malicious.
Like hits their brother on the back of the head because she thinks it's fun.
Yeah. And despite all attempts to make this kind of behavior stop, this kid still thinks that's fun. And so we're going to do that. And
right.
I mean, but then the mother still loves the child, but doesn't love the behavior, right? Love the sinner, hate the sin.
If it's a sin, or maybe it's just seeing it. The reason that comes up is because NCIS, that's the thing that identifies Gibbs. Is he'll hit you on the back of the head. So that's love in his language.
In his language, right.
So if in your language she's doing that and the other sibling doesn't like it, it makes them go crazy and it's causing anxiety. Is it unconditional love to let her continue to do it, or to condition your love to her stopping doing it? Unconditional love, it's got it. You can't let one person abuse another and call that unconditional love, right?
Right. I mean,
so what do you do in that case?
It is not love to let someone continue in harmful behaviors.
Right. So in that case, what do you do? What is the avenue forward to? Do you lose unconditional love then at that point? Say you're doing something harmful.
No, what do they say? I do this because I love you. You know, like parents might say something like that while they're punishing their kids. You know that I'm doing this because I love you. Because they have a longer view. They have experience and wisdom, and they know what
they've been through that before. It's like the statement, I used to be 12. I was 12 once, and when I was 12, these are the choices I had. And I learned when I was 16 and 35 that that's not a good avenue. What you're walking down, you need to adjust it right now.
Yeah. And I'm going to make you adjust it because I love you.
Yeah, because my love is unconditional for you. I'm not going to condition my love and decide to. So, yeah, unconditional love, maybe it's not an action. They say love is an action. Love is a verb. It's what you do. It's not how you feel. It's not what you can't give someone love. You can only display it. They don't receive it. It's up to them to receive the love unconditionally. It's up to you to deliver it unconditionally. So with that idea, I don't know where I went there. The other part of it is a giving love. Love is a verb, and it's only effective from the person displaying it. The other person isn't required and isn't connected to receive it. So unconditional love, it's not, I don't think it's a verb.
You don't think it's a verb?
Yeah, approaching unconditional love is not a verb. Love is a verb. Conditioned or unconditioned, love is a verb. You can love. And you're either conditioning the love by trying to train and teach something, or you're unconditioning the love by fully accepting what they're doing. Like we talked about, if someone's responsible for selecting music for an event and they come up with a music, you can say, I don't love this music. Or you can say, I unconditionally accept and love the music that you brought.
And that wouldn't be saying, I accept this music because in the long run it doesn't matter. It's, you matter to me more than the music, and so I accept what comes with you.
Yeah, and that's the judgment. If there's a weakness in the music, if the music uses too much rap, there's too many spoken words in it and not enough melody, it's still, it wouldn't be what I would select, but because of the unconditional love, I can accept fully what was brought. And I don't need to change it. I don't need to train. It's not harming anyone.
So maybe that's like how they say Jesus loves you unconditionally, or God, or whatever
Right.
deity that they accept. There's you bring with you all of your faults and your personality and your characteristics, whether they're good or bad, and he welcomes all of it because you are loved unconditionally.
He welcomes all of it. He accepts all of it. He's still one with you. The atonement at one-ment still occurs. The gift is still there, even if you're not the perfection that you could be, if you're not progressed as far as you need to go. And that's what we were talking about, the bland environment or the not desirable. If it was just unconditional and everyone made it, and we're just going to be sitting here, and then as soon as death comes, then we're perfected. That would be bland and non-desirable. But if we can struggle, if you have a challenge and sufferings and sacrifices in life, then it's interesting. It's something to work with. I heard another statement that I want to introduce here because you talked about God loving you. The statement, I don't remember what podcast it was. I listened somewhere. They indicated they were interchangeable. So the concept of that God, or that love is not a verb, love is. God is not a verb. God is. So the statement was that you can interchange God with love. So you can say, use anywhere you would put the word God or the idea of God, the concept of God, replace it with the word love.
Yeah, this is sounding familiar to me.
Yeah, so there was something, and it was a God blessed relationship. You know, if you have a God bless you. That statement, love bless you. It's the same thing. So I think that's more of the unconditional type, love bless you. Or, you know, if you want God to stop something or God to damn something, love damn you. Based on love, you have to stop doing what you're doing. Kind of that, I want to direct you. I love you. So here is a dam that's going to stop your progress in that area, a hedge.
Yeah, you're making damn equal damn.
Like Godfather. It's a love father. It's a father, that's not common in our society anymore, I don't think, to have godfathers identified.
In certain religions, it is still very much a thing.
And with that, what's its role? What's the role of the love father, the Godfather?
I don't know enough to really say. In Catholic baptisms of infants.
Well, we have the movie,
Well, yes, there's that Godfather. But I mean, I'm talking about like the religious Godfather.
right, where everyone will have a Godfather. It's kind of like a favorite uncle, the one that's supposed to provide assistance and help. It's the second person to look. If your dad's not listening to you or is gone, you go to the Godfather. The Godfather is willing to step in and help wherever he needs to, wherever he can.
Yeah, they've got to accept that role.
Yeah. So it's a role. It's an actual role that's done. But it's a love father. Someone based on love is going to love my son, my child, as much as I love my child.
Hopefully unconditionally.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what we're trying to define. That unconditional love is that love that you can replace in the place of God. It's said in this book, it's a specific way, and I want to get to this because I found another word. Our ego. It talks about ego. Ego is based on fear. It's that it's there to protect us. It says all things aren't going to be good for us. So your ego is there to protect you from fear. Okay, the ego part of our minds acts like a curtain of fear and guilt, which blocks out love. So fear and guilt is the ego saying, I want to protect myself, and everything else is possibly dangerous. But the point here they make next, we can learn to direct our mind to open the curtains and reveal the light of love that has always been there and remains our true reality. So this book is a small book that I'm reading. Love is Letting Go of Fear. Is it's a compilation or a synopsis of A Course in Miracles, which is huge and was supposedly given by Revelation, and they just kept writing, and it was all internally received, pointing out what love is. And so that's a bigger work on love and the condition of it or the uncondition of it. But my thought here is that love has always been there and remains the true reality. So love, if it's not a verb, it's a being. Love is a being. Can that be said?
A state of being or an actual being?
An actual being. It's there. You can call on it. You can use it, but you're using the same force. The unconditional love that you're relying on is the same force that anyone else would rely on. Whether like gravity. Gravity is a being, perhaps. I don't know. And there's different talks about that as to whether it really is effective the way we define it on this earth. So I want to just suppose that love is a being. It is and is. Love's there. It's not something we do. It's not something we can act. We can only call on it to use it. So it says it's always been there, and you can open your ego to accept more of it. And the more you accept of it, the more unconditional it becomes. So you distill love. And I wrote down here, the first thing I thought of is you don't fall in love, you discover love. So you don't fall in love with something or fall in love, you discover the love that exists already. Uncover the love that's already there. There's already love between all of us. And that's part of the premise of this work and of A Course in Miracles is love exists. And I think in general, it's love is God. Love is this thing that we're calling the supreme being or the universe. When it talks to us, karma, it's all love. But we distill love. So the second thought beyond that, discovering love, but love is distilled. The substance is always there at the center of all things. The substance of love is in everything, and it already is unconditional. We just have to uncover the unconditionality of it or distill. To distill something is to take away the impurities, to take away the fear. And that's why they say letting go of fear. Take away the fear, take away anything that's not serving or not accepting, and just fully accept. That's why I think the word forgiveness comes into that play too. Forgiveness kind of means you've made a judgment. You've identified an evil or a weakness, but you're going to forgive that weakness, and you're going to unconditionally love the action, the person, the strengths. You forgive. You move it to the side of the stage and say the important thing is it's not the impurities that we're distilling out. We're going to distill out all the impurities and leave the pure love in the middle.
And that is what forgiveness
is a distilling process, I think. Yeah. And distilling of liquor. Have you ever distilled liquor?
I have never distilled liquor. Never once.
Never created a still. But you know how they work.
Yeah, I've seen the still on MASH.
Yeah. And they have coils, and so you boil stuff out, and then the liquid turns to vapor, and the vapor goes into the coils, and then it condenses on the coils and drips down the purities of it without any of the impurities. That's the only way I understand the still works.
Is it removes the impurities. That's how like water's distilling.
Distilled water, how does that work?
This is a good question. I still don't know.
Does it turn it to vapor first?
And how is it different from reverse osmosis? I imagine it's like you're pulling up, the pureness of it up, and then it's like the condensation that collects on the top of your pot lid, maybe.
Right. So all the minerals are left in the water. They're too heavy to float in the vapor. So I think that's what distilled water means. Is the minerals are left in the boiling mixture, in the goo. But all the vapor is pure water because it's there. It's a distilled water. It doesn't have minerals or impurities in it. Reverse osmosis uses carbon, or it uses some kind of membrane that it passes through. The membrane is small enough that only water molecules can pass through, but not impure molecules, not mineral molecules. So to distill, and the realization there, the thing I'm wanting to point out that for is because the purity is always in there. Whatever is pure is already inside the initial mixture. And so you had unconditional, you had pure water in there anyway, in that bottle, before you distilled it. But you put it through the distilling process, you have just the purity part that you're going to utilize for some purpose. But you loved the first bottle just as much. There was as much love in that first bottle with the mud and the minerals in it. It just had the impurities mixed around it, and you were forgiving those minerals. And if you're drinking a normal glass of water out of the tap or out of the spring, you're generally just going to drink it, and you're going to forgive those impurities. It's okay if it has minerals and other whatever in it.
Yeah.
Your body's built to handle that. So maybe our bodies are built to handle the impurities of love, the conditional love. We don't have to, we're talking about distilling it. You can live in an unconditional love area.
Yes. So scientifically thinking about minerals or compounds, it's not a compound, or it's not something that has to change. It just needs to be separated.
Well, it can be identified. It can be separated. And I guess it depends on what you're using it for. You need distilled water for certain aspects. So scientifically, you need to have a more pure substance. But that pure substance is already in the bigger mixture.
Right.
And so
you just have to get it out to be able to use it.
We talk about unconditional love with people. Well, and maybe that's perfection. The heaven that people dream of and say, we're going to be perfect and everyone's going to be happy and we're just all going to be together. Maybe that's the distilled person, but right now in this earth, in the challenges we have, in the what?
This mortal existence.
Yeah, the mortality of it. We can't be perfect. And an immortal soul perhaps is distilled, but we're mortal. There are impurities all over us and in our thoughts and our actions and our chemicals flowing in the body. They do different things. But the pure immortal is still in there. It's already in there. And all it needs to do is to be distilled, refined, purified. Um, and that's what monks try to do, right?
Yeah, they try to cut out the noise, the extra, the right?
Yeah.
Reduce, simplify.
If you try to immortalize yourself while you're in the mortal realm, is that physically possible? I mean, monkdom isn't a big thing. There's not monasteries everywhere. Not everyone's trying to do it. Even meditation isn't as practiced as it could be, I guess.
Yeah.
Meditation, prayer, if you count both of those things about the same, spending some time trying to listen to the internal purities, the spirit, so to speak.
Right.
So if you try to listen to that, you'll get information, and when information comes, it's necessary, but it's still part of this mortal experience. And the unconditional love, how we treat each other. So we're talking about a mother to a child. How we treat each other is understanding that that is an adult in embryo growing up. I want to direct him a given way. So that direction, you're using unconditional love to give instruction and assistance, because you can't love the wrong direction.
What we're suggesting is that unconditional love is possible. It's not something that only a perfect someone can give.
And you've got to go to the next step.
The next step is and it's not only is it possible, it's happening all the time.
Right. Because this distilled concept, it's already in all of us. We have it already. Everyone unconditionally loves. So that's the realization, I think. It exists. It's not us. It's something we use.
All right. We used the example of a mother to a child, but how about strangers?
To strangers passing on the street.
Yeah. Do you have unconditional love inside of you for every being ever in existence?
There's another thing we're going to identify. The idea that you can't love what you don't see, what you don't know. So that's bookmark that thing, and we'll talk about it next. But people all of mankind, all of humankind, the concept of unconditional love being in you all the time, and you're distilling it, you're discovering love as you learn more about somebody. You can uncover that love for the person you're meeting, but the love was already there.
The unconditional love?
Yeah, unconditional.
So that suggests that you do have love for things you don't know.
Right. So that idea of you can't love, I think you can't express love for something you don't know. But if we frame unconditional love as something that is, it's being is there already. And you uncover it, you discover it as you interact with that relationship, then that love was there in the first place. And it is there unconditionally with everything. I think it was Napoleon Hill that talks about transubstantiation, or the communication, subconscious communication between people. I wrote that here in my notes, but I didn't search it. So I have to look at it and see if that's actually the word. I think it is the word that he uses in Think and Grow Rich. Is that all consciousness is connected. So you're connected with everything, and it's that love. He's just describing in a different way transubstantiation as unconditional love. I think it's the same concept. The reason a mastermind group works is where two or three are gathered, there I am with you also. The God that says two or three are gathered in my name, there I am with you. Their love is with you. Unconditional love is with you, and it's going to feed all of you the same things. So it's two different ways. You take it from the scriptures or from Napoleon Hill's writings or the Course in Miracles writings about it. They're saying love exists, and the unconditionality of it is that it's there whether you want it there or not. You're not creating it. It's uncreatable. Oh, that's right. He used this word about eternal, the truth of something. I forget where that is. Yeah, he says, I'll read another paragraph here. Yeah, where does love fit into this scheme of things? Wouldn't our lives be more meaningful if we looked to what has no beginning and no ending as our reality? So this is love. We're talking about no beginning, no ending. If you use that as our reality, only love fits the definition of the eternal. Everything else is transitory and therefore meaningless. So you have to think about that a long time. Anything that has a beginning or an end that you created is meaningless. It's not the real truth. So love being the alpha and the omega, that's kind of identifying that you can call love God. They're interposable. So without beginning and without ending, love is love is. So I think that's the conditionality of it, is that it is. We can act in an unconditional manner towards it. But we just have to recognize that any time that love is present, so saying this thing, you can't love something you don't know. You can't display love to something you don't know. You can't say that you love the ocean if you've never seen the ocean. When you see it, you can say,
I love the idea of the ocean.
I do love that.
I think that I would love it if I had seen it.
What is that one about never seeing the ocean before? I never saw more. Is it a Dickinson? I think it's an Emily Dickinson poem too. You know that one?
I'm not familiar with it.
I never saw more. I never saw the sea. But know I how a heather looks, and what a wave must be. I never spoke with God, nor visited in heaven, yet certain am I of the spot, as though a chart were given. So it's something in you. You've never seen the sea, but you know what a wave would look like, and you've seen it on movies. I guess everyone's seen it on movies. What have we not seen on movies though? The dark side of the moon we've never seen.
We've seen, perhaps we've seen renderings of someone's imaginings of what it would look
Of
like.
what it was there, of the UFO bases on the backside of the moon. Yeah, probably. Or when Betelgeuse goes red giant and explodes. We don't know that we'd love to see that yet. Or a comet. You can see the comets, but until you've seen one in the sky, it's different. What did we just see that was different? The Northern Lights. They weren't, most of us, I'd never seen them that way until 2 weeks ago when they were evident everywhere. And we went out to a special spot in the dark and it was just incredible. So, and I could say that there's more love for that concept. I mean, I've seen pictures of Northern Lights and they're interesting, but maybe going to see a glacier in Alaska or Alaskan cruise, until you actually go on the cruise and you see the whales up close, you don't really know.
Yes. Or even a cruise itself. Until you have been on a cruise, you don't know if you would like to be on it or not. I mean, well, you don't know if you love it or not.
Yeah, you don't know if you love it, but you discover what love you have for it. You discover what love you have for astronomy, or discover what love you have for fish, or for the ocean, or what love you don't hold for the ocean because you're seasick and it's just horrible for you. Or, I don't know, things that you do once and you've had enough, like skiing. If you just love slow skiing and you discover that you love that and you're going to do it every year, or if you do it once and that's enough. I've done it. I loved it, but I don't need to love it again.
Well, yeah. Well, if it's unconditional love that you have for it, it's there. But
yeah, I love it, but I don't. There's that concept. I've done that.
Can you say you've done that? Or what they say is, it's not my cup of tea. It's not my cup of tea. Like I have other things that I would prefer over that.
So if that's the case, is that a condition? Are you saying my conditions for love is I'm going to share my love, I'm going to display my love in these places that I'm more conditioned to. I'm going to use my unconditional love in these conditioned ways.
Well, and you don't have a finite resource of love, right? But you do have a finite time.
Yeah, we're constrained. We have constraints.
We do have constraints, and those are the conditions.
Right. That's what creates a condition then, is your constraint. That's right. If you don't have conditions, you don't have to be constrained. I mean, if you're not constrained,
if you don't have constraints,
you don't have to have conditions. So if there were no laws, there would be nothing illegal. If there were no commandments, there would be nothing sinful. But we have constraints. And so you have conditions on repentance and on free operating in society. You have constraints. And so as long as you operate within those constraints, you can access the unconditional love that exists without constraint. I think that's what they mean when they talk about without beginning or without end. The only thing without beginning, without end is unconditional love. I would propose that as the minute behind.
I still don't understand it, so
You can't.
unfortunately I can't
You can't
say
agree
that
with
is.
it. Tell me what I just said then.
It's not simple enough.
Tell me the words that I said.
All right, you said that unconditional love has no limit
And why doesn't it have a limit?
because it has no conditions, it has no constraints.
No constraints. Constraint is something that limits its use or its usefulness. A constraint limits where it can be.
And so unconditional love theoretically would have no limits of where it can be or who it can be given to.
How it can be used.
The constraint, there is a constraint. It's the receiver of it. Someone can choose not to receive it.
Okay.
Right?
How does because you can't give someone love. You can't give love to something else. You can only express it. It's a verb, it's an action, but it's only an action from the giver's standpoint. The receiver, what does the receiver do? They're not responsible to even receive it. They don't have to. And that's not a constraint on the giver. That's not a constraint on love. It doesn't matter if you don't love me if I love you. That doesn't matter. It's not reciprocal. Unrequited, I use that word in some of my thoughts here. Unrequited love, is that any less of an unconditional love or less of a love? I don't think it is. It's just not returned.
What is the definition of unrequited?
Unrequited is just, I believe it's just not returned. Did you look that up? Or
I did not look it up.
let me see if I think it means what I think it means. Unrequited love definition: when someone has strong romantic feelings for someone who doesn't feel the same way. Yeah. Painful experience can cause a range of emotions, including hopelessness, rejection, sadness, retirement. I mean, it can cause things, but it doesn't have to. You can say, well, I love you. And it's unconditional, whether you love me or not. I mean, you can't do anything with it. You can't move it beyond there. So you can say, I did that. So that's one of those things. It's not my cup of tea. It's not my cup of tea because that cup of tea doesn't want me to drink it. So either I have decided that my constraint is there, or I've been constrained in demonstrating drinking that tea, going that direction by some other circumstance. And it could be illness or disease or catastrophe. It could be the circumstance that constrains the ability to exercise that unconditional love. Like, I'm trying to think of an actor, Michael J. Fox. Parkinson's just limited the last half of his career being able to demonstrate his love in his chosen profession.
He still had it. He just couldn't display it.
Yeah.
Discover it.
And probably he is still as fully as excited and energetic in it because he does take roles that he can fit. He's taken roles he can fit. And his name is still ubiquitous. Everyone still knows who Michael J. Fox is. Or someone like Ronald Reagan. When he left the presidency, he left public life. And he had been in public life for 60 years, for his whole life. But he left and passed away with Alzheimer's quietly without anyone around him. Well, his wife, but family, whoever was helping him, nurses. That didn't limit his love for the country or for truth or for democracy or for whatever. The fact that he was constrained to live in his house on the ranch. And just the same that his body is buried in a tomb, it doesn't change the effect he had on everyone else either. The love that still radiates from his persona, right?
Right. It doesn't change the impact that he had or the...
Right. It doesn't change the love.
Impact is not love. but it is, what is it? The impact is what love has been received by the people that he was giving it to.
Well, so it is impact also without beginning or end. I'm trying to parse, see if there's anything else except love that fits that. This book, this course says love is the only thing that is eternal, that has no beginning and no ending. Does impact have no beginning and no ending? The way you tried to describe it.
Yeah, well, the way I tried to describe it suggests that it has a beginning. It begins when it is accepted, when it is received.
Okay.
Because perhaps someone can try as hard as they can to be an impactful force on some situation or something, some person, and yet maybe that person will have none of it.
And so it doesn't, well, and love could do the same thing. It doesn't affect them. So the impact may be the description of the receiver. That's got to be a receiving term.
Yeah, I believe that is what I was trying to say.
It's not an unconditional term. It's not, you couldn't uncondition impact. You can't have an unconditioned impact. It's necessarily physical and therefore meaningless from the other statement, right?
Yeah.
So anything that cannot be what else could be unconditional? We talked about generally accepted accounting principles. General acceptance.
Yeah. Does generally accepted still doesn't mean universally accepted.
It doesn't mean absolute truth, right?
Right.
Because the accounting principles change all the time. There's all these letters of accounting stuff from the IRS and everything else. There's letters changing it, and they change the principles periodically. So there's a group that can change those principles. So generally accepted isn't an unconditional. And from what the physics are talking about in the James Webb telescope that went out there and is now proving the Big Bang couldn't happen, there are things older than the Big Bang out there. So with that idea, even our physics, the laws of physics, the universal, we don't have a connection to that. That's not unconditional either. It's not an unconditional universe. We learn more. We change things. So is there anything else that didn't have a beginning or didn't have an end? And I think the way you talk spiritually, anyone in a religious realm is going to say God is the only supreme being that is from...
God is love.
Yeah. And God is love. So love is God. And they are interchangeable. Anyone who is speaking, and this guy, Gerald Jampolsky, who wrote Love is Letting Go of Fear, he's writing strictly from a psychological standpoint. And Jordan Peterson right now, the preeminent psychologist in the world, he talks about God, but he doesn't talk about God in a religious worship him spiritual standpoint. He's talking about psychologically, and he's taken this stance, the psychological. There's no reason not to believe that. I don't know that he's ever connected love. I don't know he's ever talked about love. I haven't heard him anyway.
Yeah. Oh, he may have, and we just haven't.
We haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
It's not part of his conversation. So I know in one of our conversations years ago, I said, if I have a chance to talk to Jordan, I'm going to ask him that question. And I forgot completely what that question is, but now we recorded this. Perhaps Jordan Peterson will be able to answer, is his view of God really his view of love and unconditional love? And whether you put the name God on it, he says that's why he hates that question. Do you believe in God? What do you mean by that question? It's too obtuse. You can't identify that. But do you believe in unconditional love? Or is that what you're talking about? And you're talking about God and spiritual aspects of life and archetypical stories. Is it unconditional love that flows through all of them? And perhaps it is. So again, that's my minute idea. What else is there that you have questions in that?
I think what I need is to let all of this marinate a little bit and
And then we can,
visit it again, because it's not answered. I know it's not answered for me.
you don't feel an answer in it.
Right.
I'm feeling a conclusion. My proposition for a conclusion, for a simplicity beyond the complexity of love, is unconditional love exists. It's not created or creatable. It is accessible and discoverable. And as you discover it, you can display it. But it always exists amongst everything.
Yes. Yes. And I think where I'm getting hung up on is, how do you prove that?
How is it provable?
Is it provable?
Okay.
So I'm going to see what I can discover in my own thoughts on that.
Right. Identify that if it can be proved scientifically or however.
Because it's still a theoretical statement. Still, I say it's this because it just is this, but you can't rely on something that just is. You have to show examples, provable examples, things that make sense. You've got to fit. If it just is, then it's true for every single circumstance that you can throw at it. You can't break it. With an example. So we need to figure out how we can make it unbreakable.
We have to figure out not how we can make it that way, but whether we can break it. We have to try to break it. Try to find an example of where it has broken in the past, or where it could possibly be broken even in science fiction, where it's possible in language and feeling and thought to break that.
Is it imaginable to be
broken? Yeah. Because if it's actually unconditional, it has to be unconditional in imagination as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you work on that.
Yeah. That's a good way to stop that topic. You work on that.
To conclude, we'll work through that and pick this up again in another discussion.
We'll absolutely talk about this again. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.